After months of searching, he found his missing wife in a cave, and she was hiding a baby, but what he discovered made him fall to his knees. The cave felt alive, not alive in a good way, alive like an old animal hiding, breathing slowly in the dark. The air was heavy, wet, and each breath burned her throat like she was swallowing ice. Water dripped constantly from the ceiling. Drip, drip, drip. A small sound, but cruel, because it reminded her the night wouldn't end, and the cold had no mercy. The wind came in through a crack up ahead, whistling softly, like the stone itself wanted her out. It didn't hit all at once. It was worse. It came in waves, cold and damp, making her skin sting and her bones ache deep inside. The mud, mixed with dirt and water, clung to her clothes like a second skin. Every time she moved, she felt the heavy fabric sticking to her legs, her back, her arms, as if the cave didn't want to let her go. She was sitting, leaning against the wall, trying to turn her body to protect what mattered most. The ground was hard and uneven, but she didn't feel it anymore. She only felt the tiredness, a tiredness that wasn't just in her body, it was in everything. The days, the nights, the hunger, the thought that maybe she couldn't last one more minute. Her fingers were shaking, not from fear, it was the shaking of someone who had already gone too far. Her lips were cracked with small cuts that stung when she licked them. Her lips were purple. The skin on her face was cold, so cold it felt lifeless. Even so, she kept her chin up, because her dignity, that was the one thing they hadn't taken. In her lap, there was a small bundle, a body too warm for that place, and at the same time too weak to fight the cold. The baby was wrapped in an old blanket, torn in some parts, patched any way she could. She pulled the fabric gently, like the blanket was armor, like it could beat the wind. She covered the baby's head, then uncovered it a little so he could breathe, covered again, adjusted it with a mother's instinct, like her hands knew what to do even when the rest of the world was falling apart. And every time the baby moved, she held her breath, waiting, with her heart tight, waiting not to hear that sound, because she knew the simple, harsh truth. In that place, crying was dangerous. She looked at the dark entrance where no light came in from outside. Her eyes were used to the shadows. She saw rocks, a piece of wet wood, and marks on the ground from old footsteps, maybe from animals, or maybe from people. The thought made her stomach turn. It wasn't the first time she imagined someone finding that hiding place, and it always brought the same feeling, tightness in her chest, like an invisible hand was squeezing the air inside her. She leaned her forehead against the cold stone for a moment. The stone stole the little warmth she had left. Even so, she stayed there, because that was the closest thing to rest she could get. Her eyes were sunken, her skin pale, her hair stuck to her forehead, heavy with dampness. A strand hung over her face, and she didn't even have the strength to move it. But she had strength for one thing. She pulled the baby tighter to her chest, closer, stronger. Her body made a shield, even though it was trembling. She curled her shoulders and turned her body more to cover him better. The baby felt her warmth and snuggled in, a small, weak movement, like a little bird trying to sleep in the middle of a storm. She whispered so low it sounded like a thought, like a,
"Shh, please, please."
Her voice came out hoarse, almost silent, like the words had to pass through ice to come out. She wasn't asking the sky for help. She didn't believe in miracles. She was asking fate itself, asking the baby's body, asking the world, anything that might listen. Beside her, near her knee, there was a small object, nearly lost in the mud, a tiny wool bootie, dirty, darkened, soaked. Still, you could see the delicate knitting, the tiny size, the promise of life it carried. That little shoe felt wrong in that place, like a flower trying to grow through concrete. She looked at the bootie and felt her throat tighten. It wasn't just a shoe, it was proof, a reminder that he existed, that she couldn't fail. Not now, never. She tried to move her foot to push the bootie closer, so it wouldn't get lost, wouldn't fall into a puddle. The movement was slow, heavy. Her leg hurt. Her body was starting to demand payment. Hunger, cold, exhaustion, all joining into a kind of pain with no name, a pain that climbed her back and spread through her chest, like every bone was screaming. The baby moved again, first a little whimper, then a louder sound. She froze. At once she tightened the blanket, gently covered the baby's mouth, not to hurt, just to muffle. Her heart raced. She turned her head toward the entrance, eyes wide, listening. The dripping water kept going. The wind kept going. But now there was something else. The silence between the drips felt bigger, like the world was waiting for the next sound. The baby let out a cry, weak but clear, and the echo made it worse. The cry didn't stay in one place. It ran through the cave, bounced off the stone walls, and came back louder, multiplied, like many little mouths crying at once, hidden in the dark. She felt panic rise like cold fire. It wasn't fear for herself, it was fear for him. She pulled the baby close to her chest and whispered again, more urgently.
Shh, shh. My love, stay with me. Stay quiet.
But the baby was hungry. He was cold. And hunger and cold don't understand secrets. They only hurt. And when they hurt, they turn into crying. She pressed her mouth to the baby's forehead, a quick, shaky kiss. His forehead was damp and too warm for such a small body. She gently ran her hand over his little head, trying to calm him down, trying to give him some safety with the little warmth she still had. The crying stopped for a second, and then came back, a bit louder. And that sound was like a light switching on in the dark. She held her breath, staring at the cave entrance, as if she could see through the blackness. Her body went stiff, ready to protect, ready to run, even with no strength. Her instinct shouted one clear order: protection, protection at any cost. She hugged the baby, hiding his little face in her neck as if her own body could swallow the sound, and the crying echoed again, running out into the night. Someone might hear, and if someone heard, she didn't know if it would be rescue or danger. The crying still buzzed in the air, like the stone itself was holding the sound. She didn't move, holding the baby tight, her ears listening for the tiniest sound of footsteps, the tiniest crack. The cave had a cruel way of tricking. Sometimes it felt quiet, but it was just the world holding its breath before it bit. Then it happened. First, it was a small tremble on the ground, almost like it was just her imagination, a deep, far-away vibration, not like wind or dripping water. Fine dust, stuck in the cracks of the rocks, fell in tiny bits, like ash. She slowly lifted her head, her tired eyes squinted. The baby moved in her arms like he felt it too. The shaking got stronger, faster, like a giant heart beating in the sky. And then the sound came all at once. It was a noise that tore through the night, a heavy rumble, cutting through the air, making the cave feel small and weak. The walls shook. The water dripping from the ceiling started falling faster, shaking at the tip before dropping. The wind that had ruled the cave before suddenly lost its courage. She knew, not because she understood machines, but because her instinct felt the power. Helicopter. The sound came from outside, above, spinning and spinning, like a giant blade slicing through the sky. The cave filled with a strange new breath, stirred up air, pulled and pushed, like the sky had opened a door. She squeezed the baby to her chest in the same second. Her body moved before her mind, protect, hide, disappear. She pulled the blanket tighter, trying to make the baby vanish into her. The baby made a little whimper, scared of the shaking and the noise. She pressed her lips to his head and whispered without voice,
Shh. No, no.
But now the sound was too loud. The world outside was too loud. And then the light came. A white, hard beam cut through the cave entrance like a spear. The darkness got pushed back with no mercy. The light hit the wet wall and exploded into shiny reflections. Every drop became a tiny mirror. Every rock grew a sharp shadow drawn with cruelty. The mud shone like oil. She blinked, blinded for a moment. She felt pain in her eyes, like a quick burn. She turned her face, trying to hide from the brightness, like the light was a hand that could grab her. The beam moved side to side, slowly, searching, looking. It didn't move like a normal torch. It was big, steady, controlled. The cave looked like it was being read by that light, like someone outside was saying, "Show me, show everything." She made herself smaller, pressed her back against the stone, tried to shrink. Her heart was beating so loud she could feel it in her throat. The baby moved again, restless. She held her breath and placed her hand in front of his little face, not to cover it, but to calm him, to say with her touch, "I'm here." That's when she smelled something that didn't belong in that place. It wasn't mold or wet rock or mud. It was something warm, clean, expensive, a woody smell, strong and fancy, like polished wood with a sweet edge, like someone had brought a piece of a rich world into the cold. She froze. The light kept sweeping. The helicopter noise still ruled the sky. But now there was another sound too, a smaller sound, human, the sound of firm footsteps outside, stepping on rock and dirt, steps that didn't run, didn't pause, steps from someone who wasn't scared of anything. She felt her throat dry even more. The baby, as if feeling her tension, went quiet for a moment. Too quiet, and that gave her a quick, bitter hope. If he doesn't cry, maybe. But the light found the cave opening straight on. The beam stayed still, lighting up the cave mouth like a stage. The wind, pulled by the helicopter, rushed in like a cold slap, making her blanket flap and a strand of hair stick to her face. And then he appeared. First, she saw the silhouette. Big, broad, straight shoulders. The posture of a man who doesn't ask permission from the world. The light was behind him, outlining his shape like a solid shadow. He stepped in, and the sound of his boots echoed differently on the rock. It wasn't a rushed sound. It was a steady sound. Then, as he stepped further, the light hit his face and chest. Expensive suit. Dark, fitted like it was made for that body. The fabric looked like it didn't belong in that dirty place. A watch on his wrist caught the light and flashed. Clean hands, steady, not shaking. Perfect boots stepped into the mud without saying sorry, like dirt was too small to stop someone like him. And even with the helicopter noise and the slicing light, something else was stronger than anything. His presence. It felt like the air changed just because he walked in. Like the cave, which used to be full of fear, now had to share space with someone bigger. He didn't need to shout, didn't need to run. His strength was in the way he stood, the way he looked, even before truly seeing. She froze. It wasn't bravery, it wasn't a choice. It was shock. She tried to pull the baby further back, to hide with her body. The blanket slipped a bit and she quickly fixed it. Her heart felt like it was trying to break out of her ribs. He stepped forward again. The spotlight hit the wall beside them and drew strong shadows, shaking with the helicopter's vibration. Drops of water ran slowly, shining like glass strings. The mud on the ground looked like a dirty mirror, showing pieces of him. He looked around quickly, like someone checking for danger. He didn't look like a lost tourist. He looked like someone entering enemy land, ready to take over. Then his eyes landed on her. Even with the dirt, the hair stuck to her face, her shaking body, he saw. And his expression changed in an instant. Like his mask of control cracked inside. His breathing got heavier, even as he tried to keep it in. She saw his eyes go hard, and at the same time shine with something that wasn't anger. It was something deeper, something the body feels before the brain does. Instinct. He stood still for half a second. Too still for a man that size, and that tiny pause in that tiny silence was scarier than any shout, because in that half second, it felt like the whole world was being decided. She squeezed the baby to her chest and lifted her chin, trying to keep her pride even while shaking. Like she was saying without words, "You're not taking him from me." He didn't speak. He just stopped. He stood there at the edge of that darkness, like the cave itself was trying to swallow him. The sound of the helicopter was still outside, but inside it felt far away, muffled by the stone. The spotlight shook a little, and shadows danced on the wet walls like long fingers trying to touch everything. He took one more step, just one. The mud stuck to the sole of his expensive boot, but he didn't look down. He didn't care. His eyes were fixed on her, fixed on the way she shrank back and at the same time lifted her chin, like she was saying without words, "I might be broken, but I won't kneel." And that's when he noticed. It wasn't her face first. It wasn't the hair, or the pale skin, or the big eyes in the dark. It was the shine. A soft shine, almost shy, reflecting the white light from the spotlight. A tiny golden spot, dirty with mud, showing and hiding as she breathed. Like the cave, for a second, had let a star fall on the ground. His body reacted before his mind did. His chest tightened. His heart jumped in a strange way, like it recognized something he'd spent years trying to forget. The necklace, the same necklace, fine gold, a delicate chain, and the pendant, worn, with rounded edges from being touched so much. He knew that piece like he knew his own hand, because he was the one who had put it around her neck. He remembered the feel of the cold metal in his fingers that night. He remembered the smell of her hair, the way she closed her eyes when he fastened the chain behind her neck. He remembered the small, shy smile she tried to hide, like she didn't want to admit she liked it. He remembered touching his lips to her skin, just below her ear, and whispering a silly promise, full of certainty. That night, he thought he had the world in his hand, and still, he managed to ruin everything. He managed to. The thought hit like a punch, a blow to the stomach. The guilt came up fast, bitter. It wasn't a nice feeling. It was heavy, dirty, like the mud on the ground, and the worst part, there was no way to clean it off. He stepped closer, slower now, like the sound of his own boots might break something fragile. The spotlight caught the pendant more clearly. He saw the shape, a simple symbol, almost hidden, but full of meaning for them both. He remembered because it had been his choice, a personal choice, a silent way of saying this is ours, and seeing it there in the middle of that misery, it was impossible. It was like finding a piece of their old life thrown in a place where life shouldn't exist. His heart started beating faster, not from fear, from shock, from a wild mix of relief and anger. Relief because she was there, alive, real. Not a ghost, not a memory he made up to torture himself. Anger because she was there, in the mud, in the cold, shivering. His head tried to make sense of it, but his body already understood everything in the hardest way. Someone failed her, and that someone was him. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. The air went in cold and came out warm, forming a small cloud in front of his face. The woody scent of his cologne felt out of place in there, but even that didn't save him. Nothing could. He looked from the necklace to her face, but his eyes couldn't stay on her face yet. It was like the pendant was a magnet pulling the past out of the dark. She noticed his look, felt it, and instinctively pulled the necklace into her shirt, trying to hide it. A small automatic move, like she wanted to erase the proof, like it gave away more than her name. But the gesture only confirmed what he already knew. She wasn't a woman. She wasn't someone. She was her, the woman who vanished from his life like the world had swallowed her. The wife he lost, not from lack of money, not from lack of power, but from a mistake as human as it was cruel. He took another step and stopped again, because suddenly the ground didn't feel so steady. His body was there, big, strong, whole, but inside something wobbled. She was alive, and she was suffering. His throat tightened. His eyes quickly scanned her body without meaning to, like he was searching for injuries. Wet clothes, dirty, too thin for that cold. Her hands shaking, chapped lips, marked skin, hair heavy with damp. The way she held her breath like every breath was a risk. That didn't match her. It didn't match the woman he remembered, walking with firm steps with dignity even when she was hurt. It didn't match the wife he saw leave for the last time, head held high, not crying in front of him. The memory of the last time he saw her crossed his mind like a flash. The door slamming, the silence after, and him, standing still, too proud to go after her. Now, looking at her, his pride felt like something small, ridiculous, a piece of glass in the hand of a man who thought it was steel. He felt the guilt like a weight on his back, an old weight, stored away, fed during sleepless nights. But there in front of her the guilt had a face, a smell, mud and cold. She held the bundle in her lap tightly, protecting it, hiding it, like she feared he would steal it. Her look was hard, even though she was weak. It was the look of a mother who had already learned the world has no mercy. She opened her mouth like she was going to speak, but didn't. Maybe she didn't have the strength. Maybe she didn't want to. Maybe any word was too dangerous. He didn't speak either, because in that second, he understood something with painful clarity. The necklace being there meant she hadn't forgotten. She hadn't thrown it away. She hadn't sold it. She hadn't got rid of it. She took it with her, even when running away, even when hurt, even while trying to survive. And that squeezed his chest in a way that was almost too much to bear. His heart sped up even more, beating hard, like it wanted to burst out. His fingers curled into fists, not out of threat, but to keep control. Control to not lose his mind there. Control to not fall apart. He stared at the necklace one last time and, with his voice stuck, with his body tense, he thought with a painful certainty, she's alive. But why is she here? The answer didn't come in words. It came in sound. A low moan, weak, almost a sigh, but alive. A sound too small to compete with the helicopter outside, and still strong enough to shake everything inside him. The bundle in her lap moved. The torn blanket rose and fell, like it was hiding a tiny heart fighting the cold. And then it showed. First, just a movement, then a detail too big to ignore. A tiny hand, small fingers, pink where there was still warmth, slipping out of the dirty fabric for a moment, searching for air, for comfort. The hand opened and closed in the emptiness, as if asking without knowing how to ask. He felt time stop. The cave, the noise, the mud, the spotlight, everything turned into background, distant, like the whole world had shrunk down to that tiny hand. His throat tightened, his chest squeezed so hard he almost forgot to breathe. She wasn't alone, and that changed the air, changed the gravity, changed the way his body stood, as if something old woke up inside him. A raw instinct, ancient, bigger than logic, bigger than pride. Instinct to protect, instinct to rescue, instinct of belonging. He said nothing, asked nothing, but in his head, one silent sentence exploded like a gunshot. Is it my heir? The question came with the weight of years, with the weight of guilt, with the weight of fate playing with him in the worst place possible, because he knew that kind of detail. It wasn't just a baby. It was the way she held him, the way her body turned into a wall, how she chose to freeze rather than let that child suffer. The little hand shook. The moan came again, weaker, more urgent. Hunger, cold, tiredness. And then, as if the world wanted to make sure he couldn't pretend, the baby let out a short cry, and that sound went straight through him, direct, without asking permission. His legs felt heavy. A strange warmth rose through his arms, like his body remembered something it never lived. A deep need to take it all and say, "Enough, it's over, I've got this now." She saw the change in his face, saw the shock, saw the recognition, and her fear came quick. She pulled the blanket hard, hiding the little hand. Curled up, trying to turn to the side, trying to put the child behind her chest like he was an immediate threat. Her eyes turned sharper, wilder, eyes of a mother wolf. Her dignity, even broken, stood tall. It was like her body said, "You're not taking him. Don't touch." The baby moved again, annoyed by the sudden motion, and the crying almost came back. She whispered, desperate and soft, pressing her lips to the top of the baby's head.
Shh, shh, no.
Her voice came out fragile, but the gesture was steel. Even trembling, she held the baby firm. Even at her limit, she chose to protect. He saw it all, saw the blanket far too thin, saw her fingers purple from cold, saw the way she hid the baby like it was her own heart. And the guilt he already carried turned into a giant stone in his chest, because in that second he understood one simple, cruel truth. If there was a baby there, she was surviving for two, and she did it alone. His pride, the same pride that had already ruined so much, shattered like glass on the cave floor. It was useless there. It couldn't warm anyone, couldn't save anyone. What mattered was action. He stepped forward. She backed away, dragging her body through the mud, pressing her back against the rock. Her eyes looked at his hands, as if expecting violence, like the world had only ever taught her that. He stopped for a moment, not out of fear, but to control his strength, because he was big, he was power, and right now, too much power could look like danger, even if he didn't mean it. He took a deep breath. His voice came low when he finally spoke. "You're freezing." It wasn't a question. It was a fact. A hard truth said with calm, like he was holding back his own anger from exploding at the world. She didn't answer, just held the baby tighter. The baby moaned again, and the tiny hand slipped out of the torn blanket once more, searching for warmth. He saw that, and something inside him finally gave in. No asking permission, no deals, no protocol. He took off his coat. The move was quick and sure. The expensive fabric slipped from his shoulders like nothing mattered more than this. He held the coat open, and the woody smell spread through the cold air, warm and clean like a promise of shelter. She widened her eyes, because for a second she didn't understand. Her mind was still in survival mode. Danger, run, hide, protect, but his body was already moving. He crouched slowly on purpose to be on her level, to not look like a giant coming in, to show through his movement he wasn't there to crush, he was there to cover. He spread the coat over her and the baby, wrapping them both at once. The fabric fell like a heavy blanket, blocking the wind, holding in the little warmth she had left. The change was instant. She let out a breath without noticing, as if her body understood before her mind. Warm, a bit warm, protected. The baby moved its legs under the coat. The cry, ready to come back, faltered, turned into just a small sound. He brought his hands near the bundle gently, like holding something sacred and fragile. The spotlight's light hit the little hand again, now more clearly, and his heart beat hard. Too hard. He felt something overwhelming. Recognition. It wasn't logical, no proof, but it was instinct, like his body was saying, "Mine." He spoke softly, almost a whisper, more to himself than to her. "It's all right. I've got you." She swallowed. Her eyes were shaking, not from weakness but confusion, because her life had been a fight, and suddenly there was a man in an expensive suit kneeling in the mud, covering her with his own coat. She tried to pull the baby closer, like she still needed to hide him, but the baby, feeling the warmth and the smell, calmed down a little. The little body relaxed for a moment, betraying her fear. The baby wanted it, wanted that shelter, and he saw it. Saw the baby respond to the warmth, the touch, the presence. He opened his arms slowly, offering, not taking. A clear gesture: I'll carry, I'll protect, I'll take on this weight. And then he made the decision with the same strength men like him make decisions in the world without hesitation. He took the baby, skin to skin, in the simplest, most human way. He opened his shirt a little, pulled the baby to his chest, into his warmth. The baby whimpered once, then stopped, like he'd found the right place. The silence that came after was so strong it felt like a sound. The cave was still cold. The spotlight still shook. The helicopter was still outside, but inside that coat, inside that embrace, a small space of safety was born. She stayed frozen, staring at the baby now in his arms, fear and hope fighting inside her. Her body wanted to rest, wanted to trust, wanted to accept the rescue, but her mind remembered the past, remembered the mistake, remembered the pain. He looked at the baby and his face changed again, softening in a way the world didn't know. A man ruthless with everyone, but in front of that child, he looked like someone who'd forgotten how to be hard. The baby breathed better. The tiny hand, once shaking in the air, now gripped his shirt, holding on like it was an anchor. And that's when she reacted, like lightning. She leaned forward, trying to pull the baby back, the panic returning to her face. Her voice came out low, sharp, full of urgency and wounded dignity.
No.
She reached out, trembling, and her eyes locked onto his, a threat and a plea at the same time. And almost without voice, as if each word cost blood, she whispered,
Don't come any closer.
Her sentence came out like a weak blade, but still a blade. It wasn't an empty threat. It was survival. It was the last bit of control she had. Her body was shaking, her eyes shining with exhaustion and alertness. And even so, she tried to sit up a little, as if she could face a full-grown man with a body that had almost no warmth left. He stopped straight away, not because he was obeying, because he understood. He understood that her fear wasn't being silly. It wasn't drama. It was memory. It was trauma. It was her life saying, trusting already cost me too much once. And still, he didn't let go of the baby, not because he wanted to take it away, but because the baby was there, quiet for the first time, breathing better. Its little hand was holding onto his shirt like a knot. He spoke in a low, deep, steady voice, like every word had weight. I'm not going to hurt you. She swallowed hard. Her eyes went to the baby, then to his hands, then to his face, looking for signs, looking for lies, looking for anything that confirmed the worst. Outside, the helicopter roared. The spotlight light shook, and the wind, pulled by the blades, blew cold into the cave like a hand trying to blow out a candle. The baby made a small sound, almost a hiccup. He pulled the baby closer to his chest instinctively, automatically, like his body already knew how to be a shelter. And that moved her, because she saw how he held the baby, not in a rush, not with brute force, with care, with attention, like that small life was something too precious. Even so, she tried to reach out again, wanting to take the baby back. Her hand shook so much it looked like it might break, and when her fingers touched his arm, his skin felt her cold, real cold, dangerous cold, and his eyes hardened for a moment, not at her, but at the situation, at the world, at the time that had been lost. He made a choice. Simple, no arguing, no long explanations. He stood up, with the baby protected against his chest, and with his other arm he wrapped it around her. She tried to resist, a weak push, an attempt to pull away, a no with no voice, but her body didn't have the strength to fight his decision. It was like fighting a wall that moves. He picked her up, in a steady, safe way, like she was too light, like she was only bones and willpower. The coat still covered part of her body, and he fixed it, pulling it over her shoulders, closing the gaps. She felt his warmth, and that's when her body almost betrayed her mind, because the warmth was real. The warmth was a physical relief so strong it made her want to cry. Her muscles relaxed for a second like they were saying, finally, but she didn't cry. Not there. She held the feeling in her chest, clinging to her dignity like it was her last blanket.
I can walk.
She tried to say, but her voice failed. He didn't answer with words. He answered by moving. He turned his body and started walking out of the cave, step by step, holding her and the baby close to his chest. The path was rough, full of rocks and mud. The wind hit his face hard, but he didn't even blink. His boots sank into the wet ground with a heavy sound, and each step felt like giving the world an order. It's over. She looked over his shoulder, seeing the darkness of the cave getting left behind. That place that had been a prison and a hiding spot at the same time. That cold hell she had survived because she had no choice. And when she got closer to the exit, the light from outside hit her face hard. It hurt. Not just her eyes. It hurt her soul. Because the light made her feel exposed, revealed, small. The wind from the helicopter lifting off almost pulled her hair from her face. The noise was loud, shaking the air. Outside, men moved fast, dressed in dark clothes, earpieces, torches, lowered weapons, organization. People used to following orders and protecting those in charge. She shrank instinctively, trying to hide the baby, even though it was in the man's arms. She hated feeling like a target. Her instinct screamed to run, to escape, to disappear again. But where to? He crossed the open space with steady steps. The storm was outside, alive, wet, cold. Rain or snow mixed with wind, the kind of weather that goes through cheap clothes. She felt cold drops on her face, and her body shivered again. But now, she was shaking inside his warmth. The difference was brutal. That's when she noticed the contrast. Her world was cold and hungry. His world was machines, light control, protection. Near where the helicopter had lifted off, one of the men opened a door, and she saw the limousine waiting like a big black, shiny animal. She hadn't heard it arrive. Big, silent, with its wet body reflecting the headlights. The inside, she saw it for a second, was light leather, soft lights, heating, a different planet. He reached the door without stopping. She tried to move in his arms, like she wanted to get down on her own, keep some control. But her head spun, a fast wave of nausea, her vision going blurry. Her body had been at its limit for too long. He held her even more firmly. And then he put her inside the car, gently, as if she was fragile, even though he knew she was strong. He placed her on the seat, and the warm leather touched her cold skin like a shock. The heat moved up her back, her legs, her arms, like her body was thawing from the inside. She let out a sigh without meaning to, a small sound, embarrassing, a sound of relief. The baby was still on his chest, safe, quiet, holding onto his shirt. The smell of his cologne mixed with the smell of the rain entered her nose. A smell that didn't belong to misery. She looked around. The car was quiet inside, even with the chaos outside. Thick windows, muffled sound, a cocoon, a place where the wind had no say. He got in right after, keeping the baby close. He sat sideways, so that his body still stayed between her and the door like a natural barrier. Not a barrier to trap, a barrier to protect. She noticed that and felt anger. Anger because part of her liked the feeling. Anger because her body wanted that warmth. Anger because wanting was dangerous. She tried to speak again, but her throat was dry and fear made everything stay stuck. He looked at her, not coldly, with a serious face and hidden pain that he didn't let show. His voice came out low, steady, like an order that was also a promise. No one touches you ever again. The words hit her chest like a weight. It wasn't "I'll try," it wasn't "we'll see," it was "it's over." The kind of thing men like him say when they decide something, and the world just has to adapt. Outside, someone shut the door, and the sound of the door closing felt like a cut. A heavy, final clack. The storm stayed outside, the wind stayed outside, the cold stayed outside. Inside, there was only the warmth of leather, the baby's breathing, and the heavy silence of fate falling into place. She looked at the closed door, looked at the dark glass, saw the reflection of her own face, pale, dirty, tired, saw his reflection beside hers, big, untouched, too safe. And then the truth came, simple and scary. If that door was shut, she had nowhere left to run. The car moved. She felt it with her body first, not her ears. A light, soft sway, different from anything she'd known lately. Outside, the world was still wind, rain, and noise, but in there it was like someone had locked reality out with a key. The baby was breathing in rhythm with his chest. With every breath in and out, the small body rose and fell, and that gave her a strange kind of peace. She didn't want to admit it, but her shoulders started to drop. Her body, too tired, began to understand that no one was going to rip the baby from her arms in that moment. Even so, her eyes stayed sharp. She looked at him like someone watching a predator. Her instinct said, "Don't relax, don't trust, not yet." He noticed. He didn't say anything. He just took a thick blanket from inside the car and placed it over her legs, covering her up to the waist. The fabric was heavy, warm, smelled clean. It shocked her so much that she almost pulled the blanket back, like it was a dangerous gift, but her body wanted it. The warmth started to come in slowly, like blood returning to places that had been numb for days. Her toes, her hands, her thighs. Everything started to ache, that bad kind of ache when the body is coming back to life. She bit the inside of her cheek so she wouldn't groan. She didn't want to show weakness. She didn't want to give him that power, but tiredness doesn't ask permission. It just comes and knocks you down. She blinked slowly and felt her eyelids get heavy. Her head felt light and heavy at the same time. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been in a warm place. It felt wrong. Luxury felt like a lie. Safety felt like a trap. She didn't know how much time had passed. She only realized the car had stopped when her body tilted a little and then went back. The sound outside changed, quieter. No more wind hitting straight on. The helicopter sounded far away now, like an animal moving off. The door opened and the air that came in was cold, but not that cave-like cold. It was a controlled cold, one that didn't hurt the same way. She saw lights, a neat path, and then something huge rose in front of her. A house. No, a mansion. Big, elegant, with tall windows, light-colored walls, and an entrance like something out of a film. Warm light came from inside, like the whole place was a promise of shelter. She held her breath. That kind of place wasn't for people like her, at least not how she was now. Dirty, shaking, exhausted, with a heart full of fear. He got out first, still holding the baby on his chest. Then he came to her door, held out his hand like he was going to help her out. She tried to get out on her own, tried to put her foot down. Her legs didn't listen. The world spun. Her vision turned white around the edges. Her body almost dropped like cloth. She gasped, trying to pretend she was fine, but her balance was gone. He caught her before she fell, again in his arms, and again she felt anger. Anger at needing, anger at being in that state, anger that he could carry her so easily. But his touch wasn't harsh, it was firm. He held her like something precious and broken, and that confused her more than it hurt. He carried her through the front door. As soon as it closed behind them, the change in temperature hit her so hard she nearly cried. Inside was warm, truly warm, not just a bit better. It was the warmth of a living house, warmth that hugs the skin, warmth that goes in through your nose and makes your chest open up. Smell of wood, of fire, of clean, smell of normal life. She heard her body reacting. A shake she couldn't control, uneven breathing, a sigh that slipped out. Her eyes burned. The floor was shiny, not in a show-off way, but in a clean way. Thick rugs, soft light, comfortable silence. She was entering a world where things didn't drip from the ceiling. He took her down a wide hallway and up a staircase. Every step he took was steady. He seemed to know the way in the dark. The house seemed to listen to him. He went into a big bright room with heavy curtains and a huge bed, white sheets, soft pillows. Her place that felt impossible for someone who'd spent days in the mud. He set her down on the edge of the bed carefully. The mattress sank under her weight, and she felt something strange. Her body wanted to fall in and disappear for hours, but her mind still shouted, danger. She looked at the baby still in his arms.
Give me my son.
Her voice came out weak, almost without strength, but her gaze was strong. He nodded but didn't hand the baby over just like that. He walked to an armchair near the fireplace and sat down, still holding the baby close to his chest, as if making sure that tiny life was steady first. Then carefully, he moved the fabric aside, checked the baby's face, watched its breathing. She saw it. She saw him looking at the baby like he wanted to remember every little detail, like his mind was trying to solve an impossible puzzle. She couldn't take it. She tried to stand up again and her leg gave out once more. He looked up at her quickly. You don't have to prove anything here, he said softly, deep, protective. Sit down. It wasn't a humiliating order. It was a request from someone holding the whole world in their hands and trying not to drop it. She clenched her teeth and sat back down, breathing with difficulty. A warmth was rising through her skin, but so was shame, and with it came a quiet fear. If she gave in to this, if she let her body relax, she might lose the strength to run. He signaled to someone. A woman appeared in the doorway, discreet, shocked by her state but trained not to show it too much. He spoke briefly, controlled without explaining everything. Hot water, food, and somewhere for him to sleep. Now. The woman nodded and left. He turned his attention back to her. Bath first, he said. You're frozen on the inside. She almost laughed from nerves. A bath, like it was that simple. Like washing off the mud would also wash away what she'd been through. Like cleaning her skin could clean the past. But her body was begging for it. He got up and walked to the bathroom in the room, opened the door and turned on the water. The sound of water hitting the bathtub filled the air with a kind of music that felt impossible. Clean water, hot, without fear. Steam began to rise, floating in soft clouds. And in the middle of that steam, she saw the mud on her hands, under her nails, on her wrists, and she felt something tighten in her chest. She was alive, and that felt almost unreal. He came back, and still holding the baby safely, picked up a thick towel and placed it on the bed near her. Then he picked out clean clothes, a soft nightdress, simple, light-colored, nothing fancy, just something comfortable. He didn't come too close, didn't intrude, placed the things there and stepped back, like he respected the invisible line of her fear. "I'll stay here," he said, "just outside the door. You won't fall alone." She swallowed hard. She wanted to say she didn't need that, wanted to say she was fine, but the truth was she could barely keep her head up. She stood up slowly, using the bed for support. The room spun a little, her skin tingled, and the cold inside her seemed to fight the warmth like a living thing. She walked into the bathroom, and when the door closed, the sound of the water grew louder. She looked at the tub filling up, the steam rising, the mirror fogging over, the warm light reflecting off the clean tiles. She looked at herself in the mirror for a second and barely recognized what she saw. Sunken eyes, cracked lips, dirt on her face, hair heavy and lifeless. She unbuttoned her wet clothes with trembling fingers. The fabric felt stuck to her skin. When she finally took it off, the warm air hit her, and her skin broke into goosebumps. She stepped into the tub slowly, like her body didn't believe it was allowed. The hot water touched her legs, and the pain came, a sharp pain, a burning feeling that climbed up her shins, her knees, her thighs. She held back a scream, bit her lip, closed her eyes tightly. The water kept rising, and little by little her body began to give in. Her shoulders relaxed. The back of her neck loosened, and then, without meaning to, silent tears fell. It wasn't drama, it was her body letting go of the panic. It was her body understanding. It's not over yet, but now you're warm. She rubbed her arms and saw the mud come off in little rivers, running down the drain. The water, which started out clear, turned murky, and she stayed there, breathing in steam, eyes closed, trying not to think. Outside, the silence was heavy. She heard soft footsteps, a tray being set down in the room, the sound of cutlery. A smell of food rose through the steam and made her stomach ache. Not from pain, from real hunger. When she got out of the bath, her body felt different, still weak, still shaking, but less so. She wrapped herself in the towel and put on the soft nightdress. The fabric felt like a hug. She looked at herself in the mirror again and saw something different. Skin with color, a bit of life coming back. She opened the bathroom door carefully. He was there, like he'd promised, leaning near the wall, arms crossed, like a guard, like someone who doesn't sleep when family is in danger. His eyes went straight to her face, quickly, checking if she had fallen, if she was still standing. She hated the feeling of being cared for, and at the same time, part of her wanted to sink into it. In the room there was food on a tray, hot soup, bread, fruit, water, simple things, but perfect. The smell made her throat tighten, and then she saw the baby. A makeshift crib had been set up near the bed, not a golden crib or anything flashy. It was simple, clean, with soft blankets and a dim light beside it. The baby was there, sleeping, really sleeping. The little face relaxed, hands open, chest rising and falling slowly. She brought her hand to her mouth without realizing. The emotion hit hard, because seeing the baby sleeping like that, no shaking, no crying, it was something she hadn't felt in a long time. She sat on the bed carefully and picked up the spoon. Her hand trembled. The soup was hot, and the smell seemed to wake everything up inside her. She took a sip and almost cried again. Real food, warmth running through her body. He stayed silent, watching, like he didn't want to ruin the moment with the wrong words. His presence was strong, but he tried to make her feel like the space was hers. After a few spoonfuls, her body's weight won. Her head tilted slightly to the side. Her eyes blinked slowly. The warmth of the room, the bath, the food, all together felt like medicine that was too strong. She tried to fight the sleep, tried to keep her eyes open, tried to stay alert, but her body had already decided. She lay down slowly, still afraid to sleep, because sleeping meant letting her guard down. Sleeping meant losing control. But the soft mattress welcomed her like a hug. The clean sheets touched her skin and made her heart beat strangely, like she didn't deserve this. She looked at the makeshift crib one last time. The baby was sleeping peaceful, and unable to resist anymore, she closed her eyes. Sleep didn't come like peace. It came like a fall, like someone crashing after holding up the world for too long. And while she slept, the silence in the room felt safe, but also felt dangerous, because too much comfort can be scary too. He stayed there standing, watching her face relax for the first time, then looked at the baby in the crib, like something inside him was trying to learn a name for this feeling. The baby moved, made a small noise, and he stepped closer, slowly, like he was entering sacred ground. He reached out his hand, hesitated for a second, and then touched the blanket, adjusting it gently. The nappy was full. He could tell by the smell, by the weight, by the way the baby wriggled, and for a moment, he looked like a rich man facing a problem money can't solve with a card. He took a deep breath and called the same quiet woman who had helped earlier. She came in, ready to take the baby, but the baby whimpered as soon as he left the warmth of the crib. A small cry, annoyed, like he was complaining about the world. The woman tried to soothe him, but the sound only got louder. He signaled for her to stop, took the baby back, a bit awkwardly, holding him with too much care, like he was afraid of breaking something. And then he started changing the nappy. He opened the wrong strap, closed it crooked, picked up the wipe from the wrong side. The woman tried to help, but he looked at her with a silent, "Let me." It was strange to see a man so used to being in control, now learning with his hands. He put the new nappy on, a bit wonky, and the baby fussed again. He picked up the bottle someone had left ready, held it too high, then too low. The baby sucked once and let go, irritated. He frowned, focused, like this was an important negotiation. "Easy, easy," he murmured, his deep voice trying to soften. He adjusted the bottle again, touched it gently to the baby's mouth, tilted it just right, and then it happened. The baby began to drink. The crying stopped. The little body relaxed. The face went calm, content, like he recognized that hug and that warmth. And the strongest detail of all, the baby lifted his tiny hand and grabbed his finger, held it tight, like saying without words, "Stay." He stood still for a second, looking at that little hand holding his. His breath hitched. His eyes went darker, full of a feeling he didn't know how to show. He wasn't a man who got caught off guard, but there he was. And when the baby finished drinking, instead of crying again, he just rested his head on his chest, seeking warmth. The baby stopped crying, only in his arms. The baby was still quiet in his arms. Small, warm, heavy in a way that had nothing to do with money. The tiny hand stayed wrapped around his finger, like the baby had decided that was the only safe place in the world. He stood still, breathing slowly, looking at the sleeping little face. The soft lamplight made gentle shadows on the baby's cheek. The mouth, still wet with milk, made a little pout without meaning to. It was such a fragile calm that it felt scary to move. On the other side of the room, she moved on the bed. At first, it was just a small shift, a change of weight on the soft mattress. Then, a deeper sigh. Her breathing turned uneven for a moment, like she had dreamed something bad. Her face frowned, her forehead creased. Even asleep, she seemed to be fighting. He looked up right away. His instinct now was pulled in two directions, the baby on his chest and her in the bed, like both were pulling the same strength inside him. She opened her eyes suddenly. It wasn't a calm waking. It was like she had been thrown out of sleep, her eyes wide open, her breath caught, her body going stiff. For a second, she didn't recognize the room. She saw the high ceiling, the heavy curtain, the soft light, and it all felt too strange, too dangerous. She sat up quickly, pulling the sheet close to her body like she needed armor. Her fingers gripped the fabric tightly. Her eyes ran across the room until they found the makeshift cot, and she froze. The cot was empty. Panic rose on her face like a wave. The color left her skin. Her chest moved fast, like she couldn't breathe.
"No,"
she whispered, almost without voice. She got up in a rush, even though she was weak. Her bare feet touched the cold floor of the room, and she took a step and another, searching with her eyes, desperate. Then she saw. The baby was in his arms. He was near the armchair, the baby resting on his chest, safe in his forearm. The scene was calm, quiet, but for her, it was a trigger. She stopped in the middle of the room, and her body shook, not from cold now, from old fear.
Give him to me.
She said, and her voice came out harder than her body could handle. He didn't move fast, not because he would say no, but because he didn't want to scare the baby. He raised his free hand, showing calm, like he was talking to someone who might run away at any second. He just stopped crying with me, he answered quietly, his voice deep, careful. I didn't take him from you. She took another step, and then the sleeve of her nightgown moved up a bit, showing her wrist. The scar appeared. It wasn't a nice scar, the kind that turns into a romantic story. It was an old mark, thin and crooked near the bone, an ugly reminder of a night of rush and pain, a cut that wasn't deep enough to kill, but deep enough to stay. He saw it. His eyes went straight to that pale line on her skin, and in that same second, something in his face changed. His expression shut down, like a door had slammed inside. He didn't say anything, but his eyes asked everything. She pulled her arm close to her body, covering the scar with her other hand, like she was hiding a shame.
Don't look, you've got nothing to do with this,
she whispered, and her voice broke at the end. He took a deep breath, slowly, like he was holding back his own anger. That night? He asked, without raising his voice. The question came out like a thread, because he was scared of the answer. She stood still, looking at the baby, not at him. Her face was tight, her jaw locked, like if she looked into his eyes she would fall apart.
Give him to me, I want to hold him,
she said again, softer now, more fragile. He stood up slowly and walked over to her. Every step was slow, careful, like he was walking on glass. He brought the baby close to her chest, offering gently, like he was handing back something sacred. She took him. As soon as the baby touched her, her body relaxed a little, just a little. The baby opened his eyes for a second, saw her face and made a small, happy sound. She rested her forehead on his head, a quick kiss, like she needed to check it was real. Only then did she look at him, and her look wasn't just anger. It was pain. It was tiredness. It was something stuck inside for too long. He saw the way she held the baby and asked, almost without meaning to, "How long?" She let out a short laugh, without any joy.
How long? You always thought time obeyed you.
He stayed quiet, didn't try to defend himself, not now. The silence in the room grew heavy. The warmth of the house suddenly felt far away, like the cold from the cave had come in with the memories. She held the baby tighter and looked away towards the window, like talking to him was dangerous. Like opening her mouth would open a wound. And even so, she spoke.
I didn't want to come back. I didn't even want to be alive.
He didn't move. His face turned hard, but his eyes got wet for a second, like he was holding it in. She went on, because now that she'd started, the past pushed forward.
That night, do you remember?
She asked, but it wasn't really a question. It was a knife. He swallowed hard. I remember, he said. His voice came out rougher. She took a step back, touching the edge of the bed, holding the baby like a shield.
Your mum was there,
she said. And when she said, your mum, the words were full of something heavy, like poison.
She came into our life like she owned everything, like I was rubbish.
He clenched his fists, not as a threat to her, in anger at himself for not stopping this sooner. She took a deep breath and continued.
She hated me because I wasn't from her world. She said I was going to destroy you, that I was going to use you, that I was dirty.
Her voice shook, but she didn't cry. She had already cried too much alone. Now it was only the truth. He tried to say something, but she raised her hand, asking for silence.
And that day, she made sure to turn you against me. She waited for you to come home tired, annoyed, with your head full of things, and handed you a ready-made lie.
He frowned as if he already knew, but didn't want to admit it.
She said I was with someone else, that I was cheating on you, and she had proof, photos, messages.
His stomach turned, because the memory came back far too clearly. The old anger, the hot blood, the pride. He saw the scene again, him walking in, his mum talking in that fake sweet voice, the photos thrown on the table, his burning look, and him believing. She looked straight into his eyes now.
You didn't ask me. You didn't give me a minute. You looked at me like I was a mistake, like I was something to be ashamed of. You threw me out that night.
I ran. I left with what I had, no plan, no money, just fear.
I fell. I cut myself. I bled. I thought I was going to die that night.
He felt a real pain, like the scar was his. She took a deep breath and her voice became softer.
I was pregnant.
His face went still, not angry, shocked. She lifted her chin as if already ready to be judged and said the sentence that carried the whole weight of her world.
I ran away to save my child.
And in the silence that followed, he couldn't breathe, like the past had finally found his throat and was squeezing it. Because in that moment, it wasn't just an old story, it was an open wound, and it was still bleeding. He left the room in silence. He closed the door slowly, like any sound might break something already too fragile. The hallway was lit with soft, elegant, clean light, the kind of silence that usually meant victory, control, success. But now, that silence felt like blame. He walked into the bathroom next door and shut the door behind him. He stood still for a moment, breathing deep like he needed to remember how air worked. Then he took 2 steps forward and stared at the mirror. The reflection showed a man who looked whole on the outside. Tall, strong, well-dressed, firm face, broad shoulders. A man the world respected. A man who signed papers and made people shake. A man who never lost. But the eyes didn't lie. They were different, tired, heavy, full of something no money could buy and no power could erase. He placed his hands on the marble sink. The stone was cold, smooth, perfect, a symbol of everything he had built. And still, his hands started shaking, really shaking. He lowered his head for a moment, shut his eyes tight, like he was trying to erase pictures that came back without asking. The cave, the cold, the torn blanket, the tiny hand poking out of the dirty cloth. His chest tightened. "My God," he whispered, but the word came out empty. It wasn't a prayer, it was sorrow. He opened his eyes and looked at the reflection again. You got everything, he thought bitterly, except what mattered. The image of the child came back strong, the baby shaking from the cold, the hunger hiding in the weak cry, the way the small body relaxed only when it touched him. And then her sentence echoed in his head, cruel and clear.
I ran away to save my child.
His stomach turned. Save? Save from who? The answer came too fast. From me. He pressed his fingers against the marble until his knuckles turned white. His hands were shaking more now. It wasn't physical weakness. It was the weight of understanding. While he was closing deals, someone was carrying his child in the cold. While he was sleeping on fine sheets, his heir was going hungry. While he trusted his own mother, he was destroying the only woman who stayed. He felt a dull pain in his chest, like something was being crushed inside. It wasn't fast pain. It was slow, heavy. The pain of realizing there's no excuse that erases lost time. I failed, he said out loud, looking at himself. The word hit the empty bathroom hard. I failed both of them. He took a deep breath, trying to pull himself together. A man like him didn't fall apart, didn't shout, didn't break mirrors, But there alone he let the guilt exist, because pretending to be strong now would be cowardice. He ran his hand over his face, feeling the hot, tight skin. When he looked up again, something had changed. It wasn't hope, it was fear. Fear he had come too late. Fear that even by saving them he couldn't fix it. Fear that love didn't accept late receipts. He left the bathroom with slow steps, his body heavy. The house felt too quiet, too big, too empty. And that's when he felt it. Something wrong. It wasn't a noise. It was the lack of it. He moved quicker down the hall and stopped at the room. The bed was empty. The sheet still creased where she'd slept. The warmth still trapped in the mattress. But she wasn't there. His heart raced. His eyes scanned the room. The makeshift cot, empty. He felt the floor disappear for a second. He turned quickly and left the room. Went down the stairs almost running now, not caring about posture, about control, about anything. And then he saw her. In the huge hall, surrounded by marble, pillars, and expensive lights, she was there, wearing simple clothes someone had given her. Nothing that screamed money, nothing that drew attention. Clothes that made it easy to run. On her feet, flat shoes. On her face, a decision. The baby was in her arms, held tight against her chest, like before. Protected, alert. And in her free hand, the old bag, the same worn bag, scratched, out of place in that fancy setting. A small object, but full of meaning. Everything she had, everything she trusted. He stopped at the top of the stairs. She was walking toward the door. Each of her steps was slow, but firm. There was no wild rush. There was dignity. There was choice. He walked down a few steps. "Where are you going?" he asked. His voice was firm, but something under it was broken. She stopped but didn't turn right away. She adjusted the baby in her arms first, then took a deep breath.
Although,
she said, simple, direct. He stepped down a few more stairs. "You don't have to," he said. "It's safe here." She turned her face a little, just enough for him to see her profile. Her look was tired, but not defeated.
Safe for who? For you?
He swallowed hard. She finally turned all the way around. She looked around the fancy hallway, at the high ceiling, at the spotless walls, at everything that was shiny.
This isn't our world. It never was.
He felt the words like a punch. "You're weak," he tried to argue, but the word came out wrong at the wrong time. "You need more rest." Her eyes turned cold.
Weak? I survived where no one would have survived. I kept him alive on my own.
She held the baby close to her chest.
Don't mix up being tired with being weak.
He had no answer. She took another step toward the door.
Comfort doesn't buy dignity, and I won't raise my son in a place where I feel like I don't belong.
He felt the panic rise, not the panic of losing something that's rightfully his, but the fear of losing the only chance. "You don't belong on the street," he said softly. "Not after everything." She lifted her chin.
I belong to myself and to him.
She reached the door. Her hand touched the cold handle, and in that second everything stopped, because if she turned that handle, he didn't know if there'd be anything left to fix. She stood still in front of the door, her hand still resting on the cold handle. The freezing metal felt so different from the warm body of the baby pressed against her. The baby was breathing calmly, unaware of the tension filling the hallway like a heavy cloud. The luxury around her felt distant, almost fake, like a set built for someone who didn't belong there. He was a few steps behind. He didn't run. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't try to stop her. And that confused her more than any shouting would have. She was expecting orders, expecting force, expecting him to use the power he always had, the money, the influence, the presence that made people back off. Part of her was already ready to resist, to shut down, to grow hard again, but he didn't do any of that. He took one step forward, just one, slow, careful, like someone stepping on fragile ground, and then he stopped. She felt the silence change behind her. It wasn't a threatening silence anymore. It was a heavy silence, like someone about to lose everything. She turned her face slowly, just enough to see him. He was kneeling for real. His knee touched the marble floor with no rush, no shame. A man who never bowed to anyone was now lowering himself to her level. His broad shoulders dropped a little. The perfect posture he always held was gone. Her heart jumped, confused. He looked up at her, his eyes were red, not from crying out loud, but from holding something in too tightly. When he spoke, his voice didn't have the commanding tone the world knew. It came out broken. "This house," and he began, and had to pause a second to swallow hard. "This house is empty without you." The words hung in the air. It wasn't a planned speech. It wasn't a pretty promise. It was a raw confession, said with no shield. He didn't talk about safety or money or a perfect future. He talked about emptiness. She felt it hit her chest, because she knew emptiness. She had lived in it for a long time, and hearing that, from him, broke down the walls she had used as protection. He went on, his voice low, almost a whisper only she could hear. "I know I don't deserve to ask for anything," he said. "I know I came too late. I know I failed." She held the baby tighter against her chest without noticing. It was automatic. Protection. "But I'm not asking you to trust me today," he added. "Just don't leave now." She closed her eyes for a moment. Her body was torn. One part screamed to leave, to run, to never be trapped again. The other part, tired down to her bones, wanted to drop everything right there, wanted to sit on the floor and cry, wanted to accept the warmth, the shelter, the rest. She opened her eyes again and found his gaze still there, steady, vulnerable, waiting. Not demanding, just waiting. Her hand squeezed the handle and then relaxed a bit. She didn't let go, but she didn't turn it either. The silence grew thick. That was the exact moment the past decided to remind her it never goes away easily. The sound came low, short, but sharp. A bzzzt. Her phone, forgotten in the pocket of the old bag, started vibrating. She felt her stomach drop before she even looked, like her body sensed the danger before her mind did. She slowly pulled out the phone, her fingers suddenly cold. The screen lit up in the middle of the bright hallway. A name appeared, too clear, impossible to ignore. The same name that had once made her life fall apart. His mother, the woman who never accepted her, the woman who planted the lie, the woman who knew exactly where to hurt. Her heart raced, her breath shortened. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Just seeing that name was enough to bring everything back. The accusations, the looks, the sharp words said with a smile. The phone vibrated again, stronger. She slowly looked up and met his eyes. He had seen it. His face changed instantly. The softness was gone. In its place was something harder, more alert, not anger yet, but warning, like an animal sensing danger near its nest. "What is it?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer. She just showed him the screen. The forbidden name shone there, alive, active, too present. She felt fear crawl up her spine, because that could only mean one thing. Someone knew she was there, that she had come back, that the baby existed, and that person wanted control. The phone buzzed a third time. The sound seemed to echo through the whole house, breaking the small sense of safety that had just started to grow. She closed her hand around the phone like she could crush the problem. The baby shifted a little, feeling the tension in her body. She gently rocked the baby, trying to stay calm, but inside, the peace had cracked. She realized, with painful clarity, that it didn't matter where she was, the past could still reach her. And now safety was starting to fall apart. The phone was still in her hand, the screen glowing like an open wound. The name on it felt like it was shouting, even without sound. She felt her blood go cold, and the baby against her chest moved, as if he too could feel the change in the air. He stood up slowly from the marble floor. His knee left the ground, but his face didn't turn back into the cold man he once was. It turned into something else, a man on alert, with his instincts awake, like a shadow had entered the house. "Put that away," he said softly. It wasn't a harsh order. It was care. "Come." She didn't move straight away. Her body was frozen. Her mind kept repeating, "They know, they know, they know." The baby made a small sound, almost a whimper. She pulled the baby closer and took a deep breath, trying not to panic right there. He reached out his hand, but didn't touch her. He respected the space. He just stood beside her like a wall. "You're not alone," he said. "Not anymore." Before she could answer, another sound broke the air. This time it wasn't her phone. It was a dry sound coming from outside, an engine stopping in the driveway. Then another, and another. She turned her face toward the tall windows. The curtains moved slightly, and through a gap she saw lights outside. Headlights, shadows moving. Her heart beat so fast it hurt.
They came. She came.
He didn't look at the windows like someone who was scared. He looked like someone working out danger. His jaw locked. His eyes turned hard. He took his phone from his pocket and spoke to someone. Short, direct, without emotion. Fast words, codes, orders. He was building a wall without raising his voice. And even so, the attack had already begun. But it wasn't a punch, it was worse. It was an attack of image, of shame, of a twisted story. The doorbell rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Each ring felt like it hit inside her chest. Then came knocks at the door, not like someone asking. Like someone saying, "I'm here." She stepped back, holding the baby. Her instinct was screaming, "Go out the back, disappear, run." But the door was big, the hall was open, and the house suddenly felt exposed. He stepped in front of her, protecting her with his body. He didn't touch her, but turned his shoulder like a shield. His presence filled the space. The door opened, not from weakness, but because he wanted to see. Outside there were too many people. Men in suits, some with folders, people holding up phones, filming, and in the middle of them, the figure she knew from far away. Perfect posture, flawless hair, a cold smile. His mother. She walked in like the house was hers, like the world was hers. "My son," she said, with that sweet and poisonous voice at the same time. "What a surprise, seeing you so involved." Her eyes passed over him and then landed on her, and the woman's smile grew, small and cruel. "Oh," she said, like she'd found a lost item. "So it's you." She felt shame try to rise in her throat, but she held it down, straightened her back. Even tired, even weak, she lifted her chin. Dignity. The baby was quiet, but she felt his little body shift, uneasy, like he could feel the tension. His mother took a step forward, looking at the baby. "What is this?" she asked, pretending to be innocent. "You brought a child into this house without telling anyone." She tilted her head, dramatic. "Or should I say, you showed up with a child to try and trap my son." She felt the hit like a slap. Her face burned.
Don't talk about him. You don't have that right.
The woman let out a short laugh. "Right," she repeated like the word was funny. "Darling, I have every right, especially when there's an heir involved, or a planned trick." Now she looked at him, like it was simple. "Do you know what they're saying out there?" she asked. "Do you know what I just received?" She clicked her fingers, and one of the men in suits stepped forward, opening a folder. Papers, lots of papers. He took the folder and dropped it on the hall table with a heavy thud. The pages scattered like dirty snow, printed documents, photos, website clippings, pages with big letters, all cold, organized to hurt. She looked and felt the world spin. There was a photo of her leaving a simple place years ago, another of her holding the baby, her face partly hidden, an image of her at the door of a shelter, things she never wanted anyone to see. And at the top, huge letters like a hammer, missing ex-wife returns with mysterious baby. She held her breath. His mother smiled, pleased. I didn't want to believe it, she said, like she was being fair. So I did what any responsible person would do. I investigated. Investigated. The word hit her mind like a sentence. The woman carried on, walking around like she owned the moment. And do you know what I found out? She asked, looking at the baby. That you disappeared for months, with no proper records, nothing. That you lived in questionable places. She tilted her head, pretending to feel sorry. That's no place for a child, she finished. She held the baby tighter. Her hand shook, but she didn't step back.
You don't know anything,
she said. His mother raised an eyebrow. I know enough, she replied. Enough to question the motherhood. The word hit hard. Motherhood. As if she wasn't a mother. As if she was a fraud. Is this baby yours? The woman asked him, loud enough for others to hear. He didn't answer right away. And that small silence, it was like a knife in her chest. Not because he doubted out of cruelty, but because the world had come with claws, and she knew how the world twists things. His mother took the chance. Do you see how this looks? She said softly. A woman shows up out of nowhere with a baby and expects everyone to believe it. She turned to the men in suits. File the request, she ordered, like she was talking about an object. The word request sounded small, but the threat was huge. She felt her legs weaken. Legal request, paper, court. People saying she wasn't good enough. She saw herself alone again, fighting a system with no heart, and the image of the baby being taken away cut through her like a scream. The baby let out a short cry, not from hunger, from tension, and then he moved, for real. He stepped forward, and the air changed. The whole hall seemed to shrink, like space bent around his presence. Enough, he said. His voice was low, but firm, the same voice that knocks people down without touching them. His mother smiled, trying to stay in control. My son. Enough, he said again, colder. He picked up the documents from the table with one hand and threw them back, pushing everything away from her. Papers flew, fell to the ground, spread across the marble like a shameful mess. He pointed at the men in suits. You lot, he said, get out of my house, now! The men hesitated, looking at his mother. She tried to speak, annoyed. You can't. I can, he cut her off. He pulled his phone from his pocket and made a call on speaker. His voice went back to being that of a man who runs the world. Every word was a clear order. Bring my lawyers now, and call internal security. I want names, plates, everything, and I want it all recorded. His mother narrowed her eyes. Are you threatening me? She asked, offended. He didn't blink. I'm protecting, he answered, and you're on the wrong side. He looked at her, at the woman with the baby, and his voice softened for a second just for her to hear. Stand behind me. She didn't want to obey. Her dignity resisted, but her instinct chose the best place for the baby. She stepped half a step back, holding the baby tight, his face resting on her neck. The house began to fill with movement. Security men appeared, silent, strong, taking their places. The men in suits tried to argue, but the presence of security changed everything. The light from the phones filming got more frantic. His mother noticed and raised her chin, using it as a weapon. See? She said loudly to the phones. He's hiding the truth. She tried to get closer, but security blocked her. He pointed at the door. Out, he said. No shouting, no hesitation. His mother turned red with rage, but still smiled at the cameras, trying to look like a victim. You'll regret this, she hissed quietly, just for him. He stepped closer and answered in the same tone. The one who'll regret it is the one who touches them. The sentence came out like a verdict. The men in suits were escorted out, one by one. His mother resisted for a second, like she couldn't believe anyone would dare touch her, but then she realized that here, the house wasn't hers, and that he had chosen a side. She was the last to leave, still trying to act for the cameras. But inside she was furious, and she wasn't the kind of person who accepts defeat. When the door finally closed, the hall fell into heavy silence. Papers scattered on the floor, photos turned over. The dirty truth of someone trying to use the baby as a weapon. She was breathing fast. The baby was restless but alive, safe in her arms. He stood in the middle of that chaos like a wall. His eyes were hard, full of quiet fire. He looked ready to destroy anything that came near. And then, without looking at the papers, he spoke with a cold, certain voice to the men around him. "Case, press, family, I don't care. I'm ending this." He turned to her, and his voice dropped, firm, protective. "No one touches the mother of my heir." The words made her chest tighten. It wasn't just protection, it was possession. It was a declaration, it was a promise. Only deep down they both knew, kicking people out of the house was one thing, silencing the world was another. He looked at the scattered documents and understood the real size of the attack. That had already gone out. It was already in many people's hands. It was already being talked about. He took a deep breath and fear showed for a second well hidden in his eyes. Because he realized a hard truth, it wasn't enough to beat the enemy in the shadows. One last step was missing, to claim everything. The house still smelled like crumpled paper and tension when he made the decision. It wasn't a long speech. It wasn't a meeting. It wasn't a "let's think about it." It was the kind of choice that comes from the heart and turns into an order from the mouth. He walked through the hallway without looking at the papers scattered on the floor. The mess from the attack didn't deserve his attention. He walked past it all like he was crossing a battlefield and already knew where to step. He spoke to his team on the phone, short, direct, like every word fit exactly in its place. "Now," he said. "I want this now." The action started quickly, people running without really running, doors opening and closing, security getting into position, a car getting ready. And outside, like the world could smell it, the first flashes were already showing through the windows. She stood at the top of the stairs, holding the baby, watching everything like someone who sees a storm coming. Her body was still shaking, even in the warmth of the house. It wasn't cold from the weather. It was cold from memory.
"I don't want this,"
she said quietly when he came back near her. Her voice had tiredness and dignity mixed in. She didn't want to be seen, didn't want to be talked about, didn't want to be a headline. All she wanted was a quiet corner where no one pointed fingers. He looked at her firmly. "I know," he replied. "But they've already pulled you into the light, and I won't let you stand alone in it." She swallowed hard. The baby moved, unsettled. She rocked gently, calming. Her instinct wanted to protect, to hide, to run. He held out his hand slowly. "Just trust me today," he said, "just for this moment." She wanted to say no, wanted to turn away, but the world had already made the first strike, and she knew if she hid, they'd call it guilt. If she disappeared, they'd say it was a lie. She took a deep breath and nodded, almost without moving. The walk to the outside felt long. The property gates opened and the car moved forward. Outside, the night was damp with bright lights cutting through the dark. Parked cars, people standing, cameras, microphones, phones raised like weapons. The sound was all the same. Voices mixing, questions shouting, flashes popping. She saw it through the window and felt her stomach turn. It was the kind of scene that swallows people whole. He squeezed her hand for a second. He didn't say anything more, but the touch was clear. "I'm here." When the car stopped, the security guards got out first. They made space, formed a human corridor. Even so, the cameras tried to push in like hungry animals. He stepped out calmly. His posture was like steel. Then he opened the door on her side. She hesitated for half a second. The baby was awake now, big, confused eyes, feeling the energy around. She held the baby tighter to her chest, like a shield. He didn't pull, didn't push. He just spoke quietly, close to her ear. "Stay by my side." She stepped out. She stepped. The air outside smelled like rain and electricity. The noise was deafening. Someone shouted his name. Someone shouted her name. Someone shouted, "Where's the baby?" like it was their right. She felt her body want to go back, but his hand was already there, firm on her lower back, guiding without pushing. Protection, not prison. He walked forward, where the flashes were brighter, where the questions were sharper. He stepped onto a small platform set up for him, a space to speak, a stage made for a real fight. Reporters were pushing. Microphones came up like a bunch of black sticks. The noise got even louder. "Is it true she came back out of nowhere? Is that baby yours? Was she hiding? Is she blackmailing you? Who's the father? She closed her eyes, trying to breathe. The baby made a small, unhappy sound. Then he made a gesture, a simple gesture that cut through the chaos. He opened his arms to her. She froze. For a second, she didn't understand. Her instinct shouted, "Don't hand over," because life had taught her that, don't hand over. But he wasn't looking at the baby like a trophy. He looked serious, careful, as if saying, "I'll carry this too. I'll show the world I take responsibility." She swallowed hard, and with shaking hands gave the baby to him. The moment the baby touched his chest, something happened. The baby calmed down, like the small body recognized that place. He held firm, adjusted the child in his arms carefully, supporting the head, shielding from the wind and the lights. The baby blinked, confused by the cameras, and then, as if choosing, laid its face against his chest. The world saw, and the world went quiet, just a little, because some things even gossip can't ignore. He lifted the baby in his arms, not too high, not showing off, just high enough for everyone to see clearly. A gesture that said, "I don't hide, I don't run." His voice came out deep, strong, cutting through the noise. "This is my heir." No shame, no doubt. The cameras went wild. Flashes burst. People shouted louder. But now the shouting had a new tone. It wasn't, "Is it true?" It was, "Wow." She stood beside him, heart beating like it would crack her ribs. At the same time, a part of her felt a physical, almost painful relief, like the weight of being the only wall had been shared. He went on, looking straight at the cameras, straight at the world. "Any attack on her," he said, and his voice turned colder, sharper, "is an attack on me." He paused briefly and held the baby more carefully, shielding from the chaos. "And any attempt to touch this child," he continued, "will be treated as a threat. I won't allow it." People tried to ask more questions, but he raised his hand, ending it. Then he stepped down from the platform, walking back to the car with the same calm strength. The baby was safe. She was surrounded by security. The world was frozen in its own shock. Inside the car, silence came like a blanket. The noise stayed outside. Inside, there was only their breathing and the baby's soft sounds. She looked at him, still shaking.
"You did this,"
she whispered. He didn't answer proudly. He didn't smile. He just looked at the baby, then at her, and his eyes seemed heavier than before, like facing the world had been easier than whatever he still had to face with her. When they got back, the house felt different, not just a place of luxury anymore. Now it was a bunker, a fortress, a nest. He went upstairs with her to the bedroom without saying much. The baby was already sleepy again. All the energy had tired the child too. He helped place the baby into the makeshift cot with extreme care, fixing the blanket to the right height, checking the breathing like he was scared something might go wrong. Then he slowly closed the baby's bedroom door and stayed in the hallway, alone with her. The light was low. The silence felt heavy. There was no press now, no cameras, no outside war, just the two of them. He walked into the room and shut the door behind him. For a moment he stood still, his back against the door, like he needed it to hold himself up. The man who had faced the world outside now looked far too tired. He walked to the window and stared at nothing for a few seconds. His breathing was uneven. He ran a hand over his face like he wanted to wipe the mistake off his skin. And then, without warning, he turned around. His eyes were full. It wasn't acting. It wasn't manipulation. It was a man breaking on the inside. "I saw you holding him in the cold," he said, his voice breaking. "I saw you, and I—" He couldn't finish the sentence. He swallowed hard. His throat looked tight. She stood near the bed, not sure if she should step back or move forward. Her heart was still at war. He took one step toward her, then another, and then he stopped very close, keeping a small distance, like he was scared to cross a line. His hands were shaking now, like they had before on the marble. But here, there was no mirror. There was her. He knelt again, this time on the soft carpet of the bedroom, on the same level as her. Like this position was the only way to speak the truth without seeming too big. He took her hand gently, like touching something that might vanish, and when his fingers touched hers, she felt the warmth and with it a bad memory. She tried to pull her hand away, but he held it softly, not forcing, just present. His eyes filled and a tear fell. One, then another. She didn't know what to do. Seeing a man like him cry was like watching a mountain split. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice truly broke. "I'm sorry for everything." The tears fell on her hand, warm, real, and that simple thing, warm water on her skin, hurt more than anything. "You should never have faced the world alone," he said, like confessing a crime. "Never." She swallowed hard. Her chest tightened. Part of her wanted to hate him. Another part wanted to fall to the floor and admit she was too tired to keep fighting. He looked up, still on his knees. "I can't change the past," he said, "but I can. I can protect you now. I can be what I should have been." She took a deep breath, and her voice came out quiet.
Words don't erase what happened.
He nodded, taking the hit. "I know," he replied. "I know." He held her hand gently, like he was asking permission to be there. "Just give me the chance to prove it," he said. The silence that followed was heavy, full of things left unsaid. The whole past sat there between them, demanding more than promises. She looked at him, at the tears on his face, at the way he knelt like a man who finally understood. And even with her heart shaking, she realized one hard truth. She still had to decide. The time didn't pass all at once. It passed slowly, like someone learning to walk on new ground. One day after another, one night after the next, no miracles. Nothing erased the pain, but there was something different. Steadiness. A year later, the house didn't feel too big anymore. Now, it had sound. Laughter echoed down the halls. Tiny footsteps tapped on the floor. A high-pitched giggle came out of nowhere and disappeared just as fast, like a light breeze. The baby, who wasn't really a baby anymore, ran through the living room with clumsy steps, tripping over his own feet and getting back up on his own, too proud to cry. She was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, watching. Her hair was tied up any old way. Simple, comfy clothes. A small smile in the corner of her mouth, the kind that shows up without trying. He was on the floor in the living room, on his knees, pretending he couldn't catch the child. He reached out his arms, missed on purpose, let the little one escape. Every time the child laughed, he laughed too. A real, easy laugh, from someone who wasn't thinking about anything except that moment. "Daddy!" the child shouted, still speaking with baby words. And that word, it still did something inside him. A good kind of squeeze. A daily reminder that everything had changed. She felt her hand go, without meaning to her belly. A small move, almost without thinking. She stopped for a second, took a deep breath, and smiled in a different way. A smile mixed with fear and hope. The kind of smile that only shows up when the future starts knocking on the door. He noticed. He always noticed now. He got up from the floor slowly, wiping his hands on his trousers, and came over to her. He didn't ask anything. He didn't make a fuss. He just rested his forehead on hers for a moment, as if to say, "I'm here." The child ran to them and hugged his leg, like he wanted to make sure no one was going anywhere. She chuckled quietly.
"Careful,"
she said playfully.
"He'll knock you over."
"I'll let him," he replied. "It's worth it." The table was ready. A simple cake in the center. It wasn't huge. It wasn't over the top. It was lovely because it was real. A homemade cake, with light icing and just one candle on top. One candle. The child climbed onto the chair with some help, eyes shining in front of the flame. She held the plate. He stood behind, guarding, hands ready for anything.
"Blow it out,"
she said gently. The child blew hard, cheeks puffed up, and the candle went out in a funny way, making everyone clap and laugh. She felt something tight in her chest, not from pain, from fullness, because a year before, that moment had felt impossible. She looked around. Now the house had signs of them, toys in the corner, wobbly drawings on the fridge, simple photos on the walls. Nothing looked like it came from a magazine. Everything looked lived in. He came to her, holding the child in his arms, and for a second his face turned serious, not sad, deep. "I know this doesn't erase everything," he said quietly, "just for her. I know it still hurts sometimes." She nodded. She didn't lie. It still hurt, but it hurt differently. "But I wake up every day trying," he went on, "and I'll keep trying every other day too." She looked at him for a long few seconds, then rested her hand on his chest, feeling his heart beat strong.
"I see. That's what matters."
The sun was starting to go down on the horizon. Orange light came through the windows, painting everything golden. They went out into the garden. The child ran ahead, tripping on the grass, getting up, laughing. He put his arm around her, not like he owned her, like they were a team. She rested her head on his shoulder, for the first time without fear. The past still existed. The scars were still there, but they didn't rule anymore. She thought about the cave, about the cold, the cruel silence. She thought about everything she faced alone, and now, there she was, surrounded, protected, choosing to stay. Because true love doesn't come like a pretty promise. It comes like someone who's always there, like protection without a cage, like someone who stays even when it would be easier to run. Instinct won over rules. Protection became home. Destiny didn't erase the winter, but it showed that winter doesn't last forever. They stayed there, the three of them, and maybe one more heart growing quietly, watching the sky change color, and there was no more cliffhanger, just peace. Would you forgive someone who let you go, but moved the world to bring you back?